So I wanted to cover my Summon Skeletons build. The thing's a beast. It originally started as this kind of a minion army with Herald of Agony. Then I realized the Summon Skeletons were killing everything before the Herald of Agony crawler could even get a couple shots off. So decided to focus the build around them. It's a Necromancer. And the key of the build is Summon Skeletons, minion damage, Ruthless, melee physical damage, Feeding Frenzy, and the reason for the Feeding Frenzy is skeletons have a special reaction with Feeding Frenzy where they do a shield dash, basically, move into enemies. So as you approach the pack, they kind of dash forward and slam into the enemies and begin their attacks. So very much worth it. That's how they keep progressing and running as fast as they can. Maim, I went with the Maim support. Fortifies a little bit more damage and we give the skeletons more survivability, but we're actually self-casting the skeletons, so we don't need to protect the skeletons. So the other part was we could run hypothermia if we always chilled, but we don't really have enough spell damage or just general damage to guarantee chills on bigger bosses or chills on packs, and hypothermia wasn't that much more damage versus the Maim. The other reason for the Maim is Maim slows enemies by 30%. In Blight, we need enemies slowed as much as we possibly can. So, and Maim will stack with our Temp Chain's Curse as well, and then we can even do a Hinder with minions being able to hinder. So, a whole bunch of options to slow all the Blight down to basically no move speed when our minions are hitting. So that's the reason I went with Maim on the skeletons. For our zombies, which are doing insane damage as well, we have raised zombies, fortify support because they do need it because we don't want to have to constantly or be dealing with them. It's rare. The only time my zombies ever die is if it's like a double elemental damage map that then also has elemental weakness. Then my carrier golem and zombies suffer a bit. It's rare they get completely wiped out. But in general, I found the fortify support worked really well just to keep them completely mindless. I don't have to even think that zombies are. Then we went melee physical damage, and then Feeding Frenzy, which keeps them aggressive, so they're charging out in front as well. And they're doing more damage every time, and they're helping keeping our Feeding Frenzy charge up on us. Then for our Spectres, we're doing 4 Spectres, but we're just doing race Spectres, minion damage, and Feeding Frenzy. I'm finding don't really need any extra damage on them, and I don't want to necessarily have to deal with focusing on the Spectres much. The skeletons are just ripping through things. That way I don't have to ever get caught in a long boss fight or a boss fight that something just hits hard, like in those double elemental where you can sometimes lose your Spectres or your zombies. The skeletons, right click, boom, you got another 3 of them popped up, or 4. So that's the reason we went there, and then we also put our carrier golem, which we're running 2 of in this same setup, so with the minion damage and the feeding frenzy, so they're bouncing, hopping, and attacking at fast rates. Then for the rest of it, we're running generosity with hatred and haste, and we also have an animate guardian, which we're basically just running your standard stuff in there. I mean, whatever kind of junk uniques I have just to build them out to get some boost. Victorio's Flight, Dying Breath for the Dying Breath grant. So, and eventually I'll probably pick up a Lear Cast and swap his helmet out. Right now I just put a heat sink there on there to give him more elemental resist so he survives better. Haven't had any survivabilities with him. So in our convoking wands, we have trigger a psychic spell on skill use on both of them, and +1 to all minion skill gems, which is where you're seeing +4 from global modifiers come in. So we're doing Flesh Offering, Temporal Change, and Desecrate. So basically Desecrate's just ensuring that we always have something on the ground for Flesh Offering. We're cursing with Temp Chains, and then on our other wand we're doing kind of Vacation, which just kind of helps keep everything with us at all times. So as soon as we run to a pack, we'll hit a mobs and run through it. Then we have Vulnerability, because our zombies, our carrion, our skeletons are all doing basically physical melee damage. So we're going to curse with Vulnerability for them. Then I kind of have an open spot here for Detonate Dead. And basically it's just there for extra damage because it can be. Which when you get into some big packs, or if you have a big monster on blights that go down, blowing up that area with the 6% of that corpse's life is a fair amount of damage. Be warned, this build runs Elemental Reflect perfectly fine, no issues. It has trouble running Physical Reflect because our zombies die sometimes. Not too bad, but you will have to summon them mid-map some, which isn't too bad to deal with. But just be aware that Physical Reflect's not great. If you are running a Elemental Reflect, you'll want to just pop out the Detonate Dead, because otherwise you'll blow yourself up. Eventually these wands will get swapped out for a better wand that has like minion speed and damage. I was just kind of finding some cheap ones. I think I paid 30 chaos for this wand and 30 chaos for this wand. I paid an exalt for the chest and self-crafted the +1 to zombies and skeletons. The helmet, bone helmet, basically self-crafted that and then added the +1 to it. For our jewels, we're looking for max life and minion attack speed, and then some other support pieces. So if we look at the tree for a second, you'll see here we want plus life, minion attack speed, as much as we can get, and then I kind of spread around like 4% chance to blind whiff attacks. And then here they have some accuracy. They don't really need it. I'll swap this one out for one that has life and either more blind and attack speed or some other option. And then here we have life, attack speed, and taunt. And then here we're just trying to fill in some resist gaps. This will get swapped out for something with flat life, minions attack, and either resist or some more taunt or blind, so that we keep things away from hitting with us. In regards to the tree, basically we just start out like you would on a standard kind of necro build. We come across, grab these. We don't really need to worry about minion life too much. They do just fine against everything, even without all of it. Then I kind of focused on getting these nodes, spiritual commands, because they need accuracy early on. Grabbing the life and then picking these sovereignty up. That gives you the ability to run both of your curses and have just enough money or mana at the end to still self-cast your summon zombies. Pick up this will, then kind of circle back, get some life, pop up here to get an extra Spectre and zombie and skeletons, and just kind of then fill out with all the kind of new minion options. Get the Golem Commander fairly early on in the build, so you get the extra Golem once you get to Golems around level 38, 40-ish. And then just keep filling in life around as you can. We do pick Grave Pack up and Aligned Spirits. This one was mainly just for the increased damage. having the rest of it, I mean the 10% mana gives me a little bit more flexibility on just being able to spam more without having to rely on my flask. And then for our amulet, our allocation that we get with the blight oils, I've done Grave Intentions, which gives minions 10% of the life as energy shield and grants them chaos resist and gives them 25% chance to get Unholy Might, which then gives them additional damage as chaos. So that's pretty much the setup for the tree. I'll include the path of building with all the details and breakouts. The other for our flask, at the current moment, nothing too fancy, just a freeze flask, a curse flask, which really these are just instant recoveries. A movement flask. Then I've picked the evasion, going back and forth between granite and jade or a phasing flask. All of them have same kind of value weight to them. And then we do need to carry a mana flask with this build if we're going to be, as we're going through so fast, because we map so quickly, we do have to cast, and we only have 179 mana, and these things take 33. So you can burn through your mana, and I mean, you're going to cast a whole bunch, but we don't really recover quite quick enough. If we get into a spot where we're laying down, we'll run out to the point where we slow down. Which you have to remember, our curses, temp chains, and vulnerability are tied to us casting skills. Which is one thing that you'll kind of get used to, is remembering that each one of these has a 0.25 cooldown, or it feels more like a half-second cooldown, and it's going to cycle through these. So really you have 0.25, 0.25, 0.25, so you have about a second cycling between these, and so you don't have to spam. As you can see, it takes about a second before we see the purple and the red circle pops back up for the curses again. So get used to that, because you don't want to overcast and keep drawing your skeletons back out, because we do have Ruthless. They only get that on the third hit. If you constantly keep resummoning them, they'll fight a second they become active, but it resets the Ruthless hits. So you want to try and leave them there, but you also want to keep your casting, Spirit Offering, and all that going as well. So in general, the build's super fast, super fun, and I will post some Guardian builds. I've done all the Guardians and Shaper, just working on Elder. So let's just go ahead and run a quick siege map. That's perfectly fine. Let's go ahead and corrupt it, see what we get. And 72% more monster life. And they can't be stunned, and -9 resist. Let's just give this a shot. Why not? 72% monster life. We won't do the blight in the video because it will take a while. But even with 72% more life, you can see just how quickly everything is being basically just chewed up. And we spend the majority of our time just collecting our loot. I believe Path of Building says each skeleton has right shy of 300,000 DPS each, and of course we have 12 of them when we're running at full strength. And then that also doesn't include our Val Zombie nuke when we need it. So the only things we have to watch for is kind of damage over time things, burning damage, those types of damage types to us. Most of the times everything stays focused with the taunt and the blind. It's usually area effects that do us in when it comes to our our ability to stay alive. So, and as you see, we're pretty tanky overall. We have about 30% physical damage reduction with our Ascendancy setup and our armor. And since our skeletons are split with 3 blue, 3 red, a full armor chest is perfectly fine to run. And as you can see, you can just see the speed that we can do bosses in, and that didn't even include the Val summons. That was just purely the minions in general on the boss that has 72% more life. And we'll just circle back through here, grab what little bits we left, and we'll go ahead and I will show you how the Ascendancy looks while we're here. So as far as our Ascendancy, because I almost forgot to cover that, we basically come in first taking minion damage and life, then mindless aggression, so that'll be your normal lab. That gives them a lot of move speed, a lot of attack speed, and keeps them moving. I then recommend coming down and getting Bone Barrier, which gives us the Bone Armor skill, additional physical reduction up to 10%, 3% to all of our elemental resistance per minion up to 30, and then we get 3% increased recovery rate of life and energy per minion, and minions have 20% more maximum life. This basically keeps your minions from dying as you're leveling. Bone Armor gives you, I think it's 2200. Yeah, 2200 damage buff, or basically works just like Skill Skin, or Steel Skin. But it applies to your minions as well, which is where they were turning green for those that don't. So and they turn this kind of ghosty green, it's because they had the Bone Armor on. That applies to them, which gives them an extra 2000 damage absorption, which is enough to keep them highly alive. From there, I went ahead and did Unnatural Strength for the +2 to minion skills, and then I closed out with Sacrifice of Mistress. We really don't need we run fast enough. Basically, we're running Spirit Offering, so everything's just blitzing. And having it apply to us to give us extra move speed is great as well. And it gives a bit more options when it comes to that. Don't have to take Mistress. I tried taking Commander Darkness for the extra. The problem is you got to squeeze another unset ring in. At the moment we have the one that's got our Flame Dash in it. You'd have to squeeze another, which can impact your life options, which we're going to put, it's hard to push much higher than 5500 life. It's still doable. I have gaps where I need 43. This ring needs swapped out for a little bit more. But for the most part, somewhere around 5500 life is where this build's got to kind of cap out when everything's like min-maxed perfect. So having to give up your ring slot, your extra +26 to get the clarity in. Now we could put clarity in our wand instead of detonate dead, which would work. or we could put Flame Dash there as well. So either options if you didn't want to go with that. But you need to run something like Clarity because our Haste and Hatred are being given to Generosity, so we don't actually get that aura effect. So you'd have to run Clarity like level 1 or Precision, one of the two, to get this to apply to you. Now, the benefit to do Commander of Darkness is your minions basically get 20% to their elemental resist, which with the base that they get plus the additional from a few items and things, they would be at max resist, which keeps them alive much better. I found having this was make clearing so much quicker for me and the minions. Plaguebringer, it could be an option because you'd have 30% increased area effect. If you have at least one nearby corpse, you would have 10% more damage, which would be huge. We're going to have nearby corpses all the time because we're casting Desecrate. And at least with one nearby corpse, you're going to take 10% reduced damage, which is not bad. I could see between these two a juggle up because 10% more damage is quite huge, but so is also having the Spirit Offerings and some duration there. So back and forth because, the Flesh Offering, is given the movement speed and the attack speed, and I think the attack speed's better. Well, the movement speed on us is about 20% more movement speed. So it's whether or not we need more movement speed or if we want to do 10% more damage and take reduce. So it's a wash, back and forth. I ran the numbers. They're not that much different. I just find having that extra move speed makes the map clearing even faster. So personal preference, whatever you'd like. I'll quit dwelling on it now. Let's just go over and take a quick look at the path of building. One more thing before I finish on the game piece. For my Race Spectres, I have one Stygian Silverback. He casts a grant summons or grant frenzy charges to our minions. And then the rest of them are Solar Guards. I've looked through. There's a couple of ways we could go with a few monsters that would do automatic vulnerability for us, different things like that, but I think this is the setup I've enjoyed the most, and have got the most performance out of them. And there's a couple other Spectre options out there that would be a bit better, but you got to start including lesser or greater multiple projectiles for them. And they have less single target, but they have greater, clear. As you can see, we cleared just fine. I don't really see where that would be much help. I really want to focus on the single target because in Blights, it's not clearing the garbage, it's clearing the uniques, and that's clearing them via their life. So it's kind of where I'm staying with the Solar Guards. We've kind of covered the tree, so I'm not going to really kind of go into that again. As you can see, and this is an exact export of the build that we just saw. 255,000 DPS times 12, which is where we got the kill speeds. We get the extra curse option from Whispering Dooms up here. We've covered all the rest of this components. All of these kind of have been covered. I did a whole bunch of different tests. Configurations, and of course we can change that to Shaper DPS, which knocks it off a bit, but not too bad because we need to include is maimed, and I think that's the other one. They're technically going to be bleeding because of the hits, and our minions do use frenzy charges, and they average 2 from what I've seen while I've been mapping. And actually that's us. We need our minions there. So we're 285,000 on Shaper DPS when we get all the configs in. Oh, and our Feeding Frenzy and curses. There we go. Yes. So with the Feeding Frenzy active, we have 353,000 DPS times 12. Our zombies are doing 101,000 times 11. And if we come in for our Spectres, and I don't have them loaded, but our Carrion is also, we have 2 of them doing about 40,000 DPS. They have lots of clear though, because of that kind of ground slam spike just eats an entire area up. So that's pretty much the build in general. I am going to include at the end the Shaper kill I did. As mentioned, I mean, start to finish was 4 minutes, and we probably spent about 25-30 seconds on actually killing Shaper. And minions survived all of his attacks, even the bubble barrage. So please like, subscribe, and look out for my other builds and other videos that I'll be doing. Have a great day.
I think I understand.
Turn back, trespasser. Cease this.
Damn you!